Dendera has 13 crypts in the ceiling and the floor and the walls, and so it's real Indiana Jones stuff. And we go down into an underground crypt. And in this crypt is really probably one of the most inexplicable things that I've ever seen. And these crypts, some of these crypts held cult objects, you know, for aspects of worship and whatever. But this one in particular, the treasure that it holds is information. And so this carving, and it's a very small space, and so it's really difficult to photograph it effectively. But this carving has this strange figure that you don't find anywhere else in Egypt. He's not a god. He's not we don't really know what it is. You know, this kind of lizard-headed thing. These knives in the ancient iconography indicate that he's teaching. That's what this means. And he's standing in front of this strange structure here, and you can see the other half of it. And so you can see, it's a very subtle little thing, but you see the second line? This actually means that there are guys that are standing in a line. And they're holding this thing that looks like a giant light bulb. And out of this lotus comes a cable that comes and connects to this box. And this iconography is repeated on the other side. And so this is typically referred to as the Dendera light bulb. And now this is a hieroglyph that's called the backbone of Osiris, or the Djed. And what it represents is power and stability. It also, coincidentally, it looks like an electrical insulator, you know. These hieroglyphs can be translated. I mean, obviously we know how to translate hieroglyphs, but no one can understand them. No one knows what they mean or what they're saying. And so this, when you're down there and when you're looking at this, you're just like, what is this? What does it mean? You know, it is such a deep ancient mystery. And it's, like I said, it's hiding right there in plain sight. So, and then we move, so as I was saying, the Temple of Hathor.
Just for a second.
Sure, absolutely. The Temple of Hathor, the Temple of Luxor, the Temple of Karnak, we've been spending all this time exploring different aspects of the heart. We've been in the heart center and then the different heart chakras. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. And I can, if you give me your email, I can send you, be happy to send you.
This creature has a tail.
Right.
And a head shaped like a gray.
Yeah.
I just wondered if there was any other information about that you might know about.
No, it's so strange because literally you do not find this, him, he, she, it, whatever it is.
This object is a light bulb?
Well, you know, if you put those...
Looks like a snake inside also.
Yeah, sure. It is exactly a snake inside. And if you think about it, the snake is one of the universal symbols for electricity, for energy, for the Kundalini,
right.
You know? It could be, it could be. But so here's the thing: the iconography, no one can interpret definitively. You know, half of what is on the walls in Egypt, it's like, you know, King Sneferu ruled in this year, and he conquered the Hittites, and like we know exactly what it means. Right. Half of it, it can be read, and you go, wow, what are they saying? And part of that is because not even their worldview. You know, Schwaller de Lubitz, the man that figured out about how the temples embodied the form of the human body, he referred to their perception in the largest sense possible as the symbolique. And he says that the world that they live in was so radically, profoundly, completely different from ours that we can never understand what it was that they accomplished, what it was that they said, not fully, you know? And he spent his lifetime studying it and came to the conclusion that it will always be, an analogy I'm really fascinated by Islam and by the Quran and by Arabic. I speak a little Arabic, spend a lot of time in that part of the world. And one of the things that they say is that the Quran in its native Arabic is a work of completely transcendent genius. And that it will always be unavailable in its most fundamental sense to anyone who's not a native Arab speaker, you know. So even if you learn to speak Arab later or Arabic later, or, you know, if you read like a translation of it into English or another language, you know, there's a gulf. And the Lubit says is that we have a gulf like that between what we see and what we can comprehend, you know. And then you find, you know, imagery like this, and literally this figure does not appear anywhere else in all of Egypt, which it just causes you to go, what the hell, you know? Yeah.
But haven't they already figured out that this is some sort of a light bulb? Because they haven't found any soot on any of the ceilings or paintings. So they must have had
Well, this is a theory, absolutely.
backup battery and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But that's only a theory. So there's no definitive evidence that that's really what this is. So, for instance, the light bulb here has never been found. You know, the system that drove it, if it were a light bulb, has never been found. You know, there are so many mysteries in the ancient world. You know, there's a thing in the Egyptian Museum that is one of the most inexplicable. It's tiny. You know, it's about this little big around. And if you do a Google search on schist, because that's the type of stone that this is, and I think it's spelled SCHISCT, something like that. Schist plate. It'll come up, and they say, oh, it was a candle holder or something. And you look at it and you know, first of all, this is a level of precision in stone that is like surgical. And it's from the Old Kingdom. It's from 2,000 years BC. But when you look at the structure of this, you go, that's not a candle holder, it's not a plate, it's not a ceremonial thing, that's a piece of machinery. We have no idea like what or how or where it fits or whatever. That went inside something and it did something that we have no clue what it is anymore. You know, you just have this intuitive sense about it. So it's amazing to, like, you know, encounter these things. So
looks a little bit like a
he's holding the crook, the rod, and the flail, and these are some of the symbols of power. And look at this, where he is being fed. So you don't know exactly what this thing is. Over here, there's a priest. This is the pharaoh. This is the goddess. I'm going to say this is Isis. Yes, this is the goddess Isis. And this is Osiris in his mumma form. This is after Osiris has died, and he's in the underworld. He's this blue-skinned dude. And so here's the pharaoh. And see his crown. Now, none of these crowns have ever been found. You know, we see like 10 or 12 of these crowns, and each one has a different kind of uraeus knot right above the third eye. What does this mean? So these crowns were never found. I believe that this indicates different levels of spiritual awareness or different levels of initiation. You know, so this knot, this cobra knot, again, the cobra representing the rising kundalini energy, you know, as it's coming out and manifesting right over his third eye. But so here's a priest, and he's got some censer or something, you know, I don't know exactly what this is, and this weird kind of rod thing that he's holding. And from it's flowing stability, strength, and eternal life going into the nose of the pharaoh. So everything on here is functioning at that level of meaning and that level of, you know, kind of power. Here's an example of the Djed, again, the backbone of Osiris, because the Temple of Seti is primarily dedicated to Osiris, and this is where we find the Osirian, the cenotaph of Osiris. There's a lot of this iconography, and this was one of the rituals that they would do on a yearly basis. This is the raising of the Djed, which was an extremely esoteric and powerful spiritual ritual that they engaged in that we really don't understand anymore. This is, you've probably heard of this, the helicopter, the tank, the plane, famous Abydos hieroglyphs, right? So this is up very high on a cornice in the ceiling. It's, what, Sarah, 15, maybe 20 feet off the ground. And you really got to look, you got to get your camera zoom out and zero in. But if you look closely at it, you can see a helicopter, a tank, a spaceship, or an airplane, perhaps. Maybe that's a submarine. Now, there are a lot of theories about where did these come from, how did they get here, what do they mean. Again, there's nothing really truly definitive that's known about it, but this is one of the mysteries that you're going to come headlong against when you're there. And this is the place, so this is the Osirian in Abydos, and this is where the flower of life is carved. So these stones, this is really one of the greatest enigmas on the planet. And to me, this is one of the very clearest indicators that the orthodoxy about the age of culture and the age of humanity is just flat out wrong. And I have a whole talk I do just on this. So, but
What day is this on the trip, on the boat trip?
What's that?
What day is it on the boat trip?
Oh, that's a good question. Probably about day 10, 11, something like that.
You said the boat trip was only a week long.
Oh yeah, so, but day 10 from the time that we get into the country. So, and actually I think we sail for, 7 days.
Yeah.
7 days, maybe 8, I think. So these stones, so this location, first of all, the architecture is completely out of keeping with every other form of architecture in all of Egypt, other than certain things on the Giza plateau. So that's the first thing, is that it just doesn't fit. The historical record, when Seti I was building his temple, they're building, so Abydos is sort of like Mecca to the ancient Egyptians. This was the most sacred site on the planet. They're building Seti's temple. And so the Egyptians have been coming here for thousands of years. They're building Seti's temple, and they go, oh crap, what's this? We didn't know that was there. So in 1500 BC, actually 1280 BC, that structure was completely buried and hidden and lost and forgotten about under the sand. So out of deference to this structure, Seti finishes his temple in the shape of an L. The only temple in all of Egypt that's like this. Remember, they all follow exactly the form of the human body. So that's what the historical record from Seti's time says about this. Now, modern Egyptologists say, that he made that up to make the site of his temple seem more important, to give it a little more gravitas. These stones are the size of boxcars. They're huge. They are, and they weigh phenomenal, amounts. So when you go to the site, you stand on the ground level and you look down into a 35-foot deep hole that holds the remnants of this ancient temple. And they are completely unadorned. There's nothing on them. No hieroglyphs, no carvings, no nothing, which is also so unlike the Egyptians. They put stuff everywhere. There's hieroglyphs and carvings on every available surface. The only thing that's found there, and it stays flooded most of the year, and if you've traveled to South America, to Peru, for instance, this style of stonework will start to be very familiar. These puzzle pieces with these huge stones that fit together in the weirdest ways. It's like, why did they go to all that trouble? Why didn't they just make it squares? And so, like I said, it stays flooded most of the time now because of the building of the high dam and the raising of the water level. And the only thing that's found on it in the walls is the flower of life, tattooed into the stone of, of that column right there. It's mainly right under there and then around the other side. I got lucky. When this picture was taken, I actually got down inside the Osirian without any water present. Walked around and shot a bunch of videos.
How deep is that water? Can you just walk in there?
They won't let you.
Yeah.
If you go, maybe. But they don't want anybody to get hurt. This wooden bridge is really kind of rickety, and
So we walked down the bridge secretly. We got to go down. We did a meditation on there. I actually have water from there that I brought back. A lot of us picked up water.
Yeah.
And so it's in my bathroom in a Ziploc bag. Some petrified, someone will think it's something else. And,
So actually there are these very deep wells. You can just see the edge of one right here. There are 3 wells in the center of the floor. And those go incredibly far down into the earth, like 30 meters or something. And those were designed to be naturally filled with water. And there's also a channel that runs all the way around the outside that would just naturally be filled with water. But the interior, when it's flooded like this, that water is 1.5 to maybe 3 feet deep most of the time. So you could wait around in there if they'd let you, but you just would have to be careful to not fall into the 30-foot deep hole in the middle that you can't really see. You know, that'd mess up your day, I'm thinking. So I hope you brought a change of clothes. So here's the Flower of Life. And so for me, the first time I went here, I'm like, wow, weird. Okay, I have no idea what this shit is. And I'm taking pictures. I'm just being a tourist. And this was a number of years ago. And the Flower of Life, Drunvalo hadn't, at that point in time, published his books. It hadn't really fully come up into consciousness yet. And actually, my guide at the time, Emil, I misidentified this. He said, oh, it's the Tree of Life. And he's like, yeah, that's the Tree of Life thing. Oh, okay. But yeah, there are several of them. There are multiples.
Several.
Yeah, there's big, there's little, there's. And so then about 10 minutes later, I'm up in the temple proper, and I walk into a shaft of light and have this remarkable, completely transformative vision of the Flower of Life as pure, living sacred geometry. It was radical. And it fucked me up for a long, long time. Yeah, there's a better shot. You can see the two.